I've learned a tremendous amount from Rich, particularly when it comes to this idea of something that Blake, I think, originally pointed out to Rich in your like onboarding for partners, which was a split between work and life, and how basically you built a very successful business by all accounts, you know, by all metrics, by kind of like building something into a corner, basically like 10 hours a week, you know, very successful business, like $500,000 a year, like, you know, buys you a lot of freedom in that time. But you were running it from a place of some form of fragmentation. You know, you could extrapolate that out into fear. And I know that when you started speaking publicly about your experience with addiction and recovery, that a lot clicked for you in terms of unlocking like more of the true value you have to offer, or like trusting yourself more. And I think that also extended out into your clients.
Yep.
And I would say the way that Bryce introduced himself this weekend as an artist first is a direct testament to you sort of like not fragmenting your work and your life so much. So I think that's had an extraordinary ripple effect. And I remember when I watched that video of you talking about, you know, what had happened since you worked with Blake, and he gave you a few points as he does, just like all the incredible benefits that it had, including making another $500,000, but from a place of alignment, right? So I want to talk about that, the fragmentation element. Sure. I think that's very important. Anytime that we're creating division between work-life, because there's this whole idea of work-life balance, right? But that actually comes at a tremendous cost. Part of what I did last night was just to try and bridge all of the dimensions of my work and my life into one container. Lead from the heart. So I'll put a pin in that. And then the next thing is this idea of baseline that you've recently started talking about. Like if you like jump up to this level, you make 100K in a month, and then the next month you make like 11. It's like, wait a sec, I just figured out a thing that made me 6 figures in a month, but instead of doing more of that, I'm gonna come back to baseline. And to your point last night when we were talking in the kitchen, you really notice it when you start to like run out a runway. Like then you get into gear and you like make it happen, and you like sign people up, and that's in money.
Take notes for you.
But it's also in it's in all aspects of life. We have this median baseline. Even Sam Evans talked about it back in the day, that we have this like floor.
Oh, yes.
That was the first.
Well, it's originally it's kind of like a Tony Robbins thing, honestly, but I'm sure he got it from someone else. Like,
it's not an original idea, but I remember that when I first heard that from Sam, it was like, oh yeah, like that is
like
real.
That's true.
You know? Yeah. So I think those two things are probably a good way into this discussion.
Yep.
And maybe I'll give it to you there if you have anything to add.
Yeah. So I guess we can start with the work-life integration.
Yeah.
I mean,
Thermostat. Yep.
Okay. I mean, honestly, Zander, like your clients seem more integrated than I was. I mean, maybe it's working with you, or maybe it's just because there's more like artists in the room. Everyone here seems a little bit more integrated than I was at the end of my journey. I mean, I guess to kind of talk through what happened, and then I'm curious, like, just to hear if you feel like you're struggling with this, or if there's kind of like barriers or fragmentation. So Zander kind of summarized it, but the way that like I like to visualize this is for the first 10 years of my, I guess, entrepreneurial journey, I basically had this like wall up between, well, maybe the walls, can I use this?
Yeah, you're good.
Wall up between work over here, okay, and like life, okay? And the whole point of this business that I created was to spend as little time as possible. Sorry, what is this wobbly yesterday?
Yeah, It's not a pro easel. I got you.
Staples.
Yeah, Staples.
So spend as little time as possible, right, and make the most amount of money, okay, in the business. Which there's nothing wrong with that. This is all about the context and the meaning you assign to it. But my goal was like shrink this so that I can take the time and the money and bring it over here and then do whatever it is that I wanted to do in my quote unquote life, right? So the work was like just this means to an end. And on paper, it was good, right? And Zander said, like, end of the road, me, and we talked about this with Jay a bit yesterday. The most optimized version of the business was like $500,000 a year.
Yep.
And 10 to 15 hours a week. Like, would it be helpful for me to explain like how that? Sometimes people are curious about like how that maths.
Yeah, why not?
Most of my people already know this, but like
say how it breaks down.
Yeah, so it was a design business, but we did like kind of all creative services, so like website, video, graphic design, branding, strategy, and consulting. And at the end of the road, I had really taken the scale with price as the gospel, which I still think it's kind of the gospel.
Yep.
But I had on any given year only 5 to 8 clients, okay? And these were clients that I worked with for very long periods of time. I really like working with people like over years. I'm not really interested in like, helping
2 month
someone.
program.
2 months and then be like, see you later, have a great life.
Hope it worked.
There's a place for that, but it's just not, doesn't lean into my strengths.
Yep. Sure.
5 to 8 clients, minimum rate, $60K a year. Okay, so I would not take on any clients for less than that. And, AR. And mostly it was like retainers. So they'd pay anywhere from like 5 to 10 grand a month for basically just like ongoing support.
And a lot of deliverables at that point.
That's what's interesting.
Yeah. Because that's
I kind of
big
learned
shift.
this. I learned this lesson after the fact about what was really going on. So, like we talked about yesterday with the delegation, I had this big team of freelancers that I worked with. I didn't have any full-time employees though. It was just like I hired out this like crack team of people that I really cracked. I assembled a team like Ocean's 11.
Yeah.
And they did most of the fulfillment work, right? So fulfillment is like all of the doing shit stuff. And then I was basically like the orchestrator. And so I was kind of like, I'm like a whiteboard kind of guy. So
I love it.
So I was in the middle, right? And I was dealing with the client. And then all of my peeps were around me kind of executing on these like, deliverables. Does that look like
That's a gift.
A gift.
Yeah, there you go. Very cute. So they were delivering on all these deliverables that I was defining based on kind of the strategy that I filled out. So if we end up talking about like selling outcomes and value-based pricing later, this is kind of a little entrance into that.
Right.
But that's how the business worked, and I'll come back to this when we talk about the integration stuff. So you can actually make a lot of money with not a lot of clients is basically the point.
And they deeply trusted you, right?
For
To
sure,
your point about
for sure.
the
Yeah,
sales
because there was all of this stuff going on under the hood that I just wasn't tapped into. That was where the value like really lied for the clients. I thought it was like, I had built this system, right? I thought it was all of this stuff on the outside, like all the deliverables and all the shit. Ironically, that wasn't the case at all. It was basically just what's happening here. And then all of this was just like the party favors, the little bonuses that were the execution.
When you say
of
it
that.
happening here, what is this?
So this is basically the like thinking, strategy, consulting, even like mentorship type stuff. So like what the clients really actually valued was how I thought about their business and our relationship.
Yeah.
And I thought it was, well, yeah, but like all this stuff too.
Right. Right. So that's a major differentiation in thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. And that doesn't mean like, oh, this stuff is bad or you shouldn't do it or there's no value in it. I don't want anyone to ever think that that's the case, because sometimes when you hear people talking about like, okay, no deliverables, they think that that means deliverables are bad or they're not helpful or they don't do anything, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. But it's getting clear on like, well, what's my role? Like, how do I fit into this equation?
Right.
And that's going to be different for everyone. I have clients that are designers who this is not where they should be, right? Like their highest point of leverage is not right here, like not doing the work, right? I have a branding designer named Alex who I work with. I have a lot of Alexes, not this one. And he basically like trimmed down his business. He had a bunch of employees, fired them all, and he got back into the work and is doing like extremely high level branding where he is like, driving the mouse and doing the creative art. He's previously an architect.
Yep.
With like huge resorts in Mexico, like Four Seasons, stuff like that. So
that's craft. Like I think there's a difference between deliverable and craft, and when the deliverable can be done from a place of craft, a lot of people who, like that's their zone of expression, right? They should be doing that thing. You don't become a manager of other designers if you love designing.
Yes.
Design.
Yep.
So
I just wanted to give you that caveat, because if we start talking about selling outcomes and stuff, especially with a lot of people who like your zone of genius is doing the thing.
Yeah.
I don't want you to like create a course about the violin and not play the violin or whatever.
Yeah. Just build a course.
Just make a course and then manage the course. No,
exactly.
I don't
then the clients will come.
Okay. So sorry for the side quest. It'll all kind of loop together. So we're back here, work-life integration. So where we left me, this was probably 2000, maybe 22, 23. Business was booming. I kind of started moving into this other part of my journey where I was writing a lot more, sharing online. Started this course called How to Work Less, which essentially teaches all of this. Okay, I had summed up all the lessons that I'd learned doing this and, kind of productized it. But this wall here, the firewall between work and life, was very strong. The barrier was still up. And the big reason for this is, as Zander alluded to, I'm a person in recovery. I've been clean from drugs for almost 14 years. It'll be a month and a half.
Yep.
And that's, oh, thanks. I don't get a clap for that often. Thanks, guys.
Are you having the cacao?
What?
Are you having the cacao?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I was just curious.
It's not a drug.
Yeah.
So it relapsed today.
I don't know, bro. I'm kind of feeling it.
Oh, the hallucinogenic cacao.
Don't trust Holly.
Yeah. So that's my life, right? Like the way I looked at it was like, I have all this stuff over here, and like I'm a guy with hobbies. I've gone down a lot of rabbit holes.
Yep.
I was sharing with Delphi that I was a pro gamer for 3 years, like you.
Yeah.
Pro gamer to entrepreneur pipeline is real. It's totally real. There's a lot of complementary skill sets. Played music. Like I just have a bunch of shit that I'm into always. So this was like creating the ability for me to have the freedom to do all that stuff.
Yeah, a lot of time, a lot of expendable income.
Exactly.
Yep.
But the big thing over here was like, I'm engaged in this recovery community, and that's kind of like the most important thing in my life. It's like the foundational operating system behind everything that I do. And I had told myself this story that this like recovery stuff over here was,
You're good.
You're doing great. Was so special and sacred and personal and like all this stuff that it's not something that I should share outside of like just close friends or whatever. And I had told myself, like, the lie that I was saying was like, oh, it's like really special and I don't want to like monetize it. You know, I don't want to be like, buy my $37 get recovery course or whatever. my $37 offer on, you know.
You want to make $500,000 a year?
You need to stop doing drugs. $37.
Yeah.
So I felt like it was just so important to me and sacred, and obviously all the work that I do over there is for free, right? It's not from a place of like, from a place of service, not from a place of like exchange.
Yeah. Right.
So that was the lie, right? And I was like, okay, well, let's keep this separate, totally firewalled. No one knew anything about it. Like, I never told you until I told it. Like, total firewall.
Right. Yep. But you shared it with Blake.
Well, yeah. When we spoke, and you know, long story short, there was some practical, tactical stuff related to the business. He was like, you need to sell something more expensive, which I did. That was not that hard. But the biggest thing was he was like, you need to share your kind of recovery story publicly. And breaking down this wall here was probably, ironically, in terms of like, if you want to just talk about business success, whatever that means, the highest leverage thing that I could have ever done. Because what I wasn't aware of at the time was all of like the most valuable things, you know, like my true value or whatever, was a result of this.
Yeah.
Right. And I was bringing all of this into my work, but basically using a ton of mental bandwidth and energy to like launder it through business concepts so that so that I could explain these things to people, but be like, hey, don't worry about where it came from, you know? And obviously,
how do you know this stuff, Mom?
I just figured it out.
4-hour work week.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
12 hours.
Yep. So that took a lot of energy. Like, it was actually pretty kind of tiring to live that way, where you're accessing this operating system all the time, but you got to like translate.
Right.
So once I shared this publicly, and I shared it with my clients first, and then I shared it with like the public world or whatever on social media and all that stuff. YouTube. Yeah, it really just kind of unlocked a new level in terms of like how I was able to serve people and go deeper. And yeah, I just felt like I was able to help people kind of solve the problems under the problems, as opposed to just the surface stuff, which is a lot of what this engages with, right? Like, this is, don't get me wrong, like, this is good shit. Like, you want to know this, but like your kind of whole thesis yesterday was like what's your E word? Energetics, right? The stuff below the stuff is really where all the leverage is, and then. Yeah, exactly. This is the stuff below the stuff. Yeah. And we all have our own version of that, which, like, you know.
This is the clean fuel, like the recovery process, and you being involved in that community.
Yep.
That's the renewable energy, so to speak. Yeah. Hi, do you want to speak?
Rich, can you just say a little bit more about like what the process looked like in terms of informing your clients, like social media, I can imagine, but like how did you go about that?
Bryce, you want to tell, what did I do? You were there. Do you remember?
I think you introduced it on a call.
Yep.
I don't know if I was on that call. I can't remember if it. Sorry.
I missed that one.
Bryce was like, I watched it on Netflix.
Yeah, no, I don't remember if I watched the replay after.
Do you even know that it happened?
I do. No, because it like impacted me a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Well, all right. Practically, I was doing calls with my clients, and you know, I had started this like more expensive group or whatever.
Which was not deliverables based, right? Which was more strategy based, relationship based. I'm in your corner.
Yep.
Yeah.
You very.
Left the agency at that point, or you?
That was one of the other. So shit. I think I can actually. Where'd my pen go? So the 4 onboarding outcomes, right? Were like.
The onboarding you did with Blake.
With Blake, yeah. Was one was sell something expensive, okay? And I had already sold expensive stuff. And this is like a whole other side quest.
Right.
But I'd sold $100,000 projects,
Yep.
but I hadn't sold like super expensive, just
Strategy.
consulting, strategy, mentorship based stuff.
Yep.
And even though I could go into a room and be like, it's 100K, no big deal for like a design client,
Yeah.
I still had to like re-level up
Yeah.
saying those big
The
numbers.
glass ceiling thing.
Yep.
Yep.
So anyway, so sell something expensive.
Because at that point, just for context,
Yep.
you'd taken the insights from the agency and put it into a course, which you
Yep.
were selling for what, like a couple grand?
$3,000 or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, it still exists. You can buy it if you want. This is where I transition to the pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you act right now.
Yep. Okay. So sell something expensive. I may not have the order right here, but share recovery was one of them. 3 was shut down agency. Okay, which I had been in pre-contemplation about, but really dragging my feet on just doing. Shut down agency. And I had already like stopped signing new clients, but I was kind of just riding the wave with the current clients that I had already had. And there was such a mental tax on kind of keeping like that one tab open with just like a few clients going. And it seems so paradoxical, right? You're like, oh, why would you ever shut down this business? Like you basically don't have to do anything. It's bringing in like, 6 figures. But there's like, the best way I can describe it is like, can I have a second whiteboard?
Staples?
0% of your brain power and 1% of your brain power are like
Night and day.
night and day. Like it's not the difference between 0 and 1%. It's the difference between like, 1 and 100.
Yeah.
So even though
just for clarity, in terms of the bandwidth to keep like open loops.
to keep open loops, right? So I had this open loop of my agency, which was like even more lean at this point. Like I had only had a couple of my best clients left. All I had to do was like talk to them once a week. Was still making some degree of 6 figures. I'm not sure how much exactly. And everyone's like, well, why would you shut it down? I'm like, well, this is the tax, right?
Yeah.
Because 1% of your brain power is a lot.
It blocks the new insight.
It does. And you don't feel it until you make that decision to shut it down. And then you finally realize, wow, like a lot of my energy was spent just juggling this like responsibility in the background. So that needed to happen, which took a little bit, but I did that. And then the last one, which is kind of similar, right, was, and this was the hardest one, and something I'm still working on, is like moving from, and this will go right into our thermostat thing, running a business based on fear, okay, letting go of that fuel, and picking up a new fuel. And it was very nice of Blake to not tell me what a new fuel should look like.
Yeah.
But he was like, yeah, dude, like all of this over here, right? The firewall, that's all fear,
Yeah.
It's all basically a business kind of built around control.
Right.
So
So you told your clients,
I told my clients,
to answer Hyatt's question, it was like you decided you were gonna tell them on a call in a group.
yep,
I've never revealed this before, but
this is my story. Yep, this is exactly like why I am the way that I am.
it's a huge part of your life.
Yeah. I mean, it's the most important thing.
And it's faith driven, right?
Yeah.
Recovery. Like the first tenet of a lot of those systems is like a higher power.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have to have a higher power to do recovery stuff,
Right.
but it's a big part of.
Well, in
I think.
your particular journey, is faith a part of it?
Yeah.
I'm curious how much you think has to do with like what you feel like your purpose is in life, right? Because as I look at that, if you have the firewall up, essentially you've got this category of like this thing that I have to do, which is work, so that I can live my life. But that completely separates like dedicating your life to a purpose, right?
Like a
to
mission.
something that you
100%.
feel like you're here for. Like, is that the piece? Like, is
That's,
that, okay.
You got it. That's,
Okay.
yep. You could have not said it better than me. So that firewall basically made it so there was not integration in my life, you know, because the recovery is the most important thing.
Yep.
And how I found I could best kind of be of service to people, and as a result, like, I guess, create more value in the marketplace, was being able to bring this stuff to the work and help people on a deeper level, right?
Because you feel like that's what you're here to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I mean, this was so unplanned. Like, I really believe that all of the best shit that's ever happened in my life, I didn't plan. You know, all of my like really good ideas are pale in comparison to like the stuff that I just had no control over and fell backwards
Like
into.
that power outage last night.
Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
I'm curious how did your work and your interaction with your clients and the way that the fulfillment went, how did it change when you started being more like, it's like, yeah, okay, you shared it. It was like, okay, now I'm out in the open, but like long term, how did you see that decision change the way that you were interacting with the clients?
Probably the most simple way, and this is ironic, is literally just me being more vulnerable about what's going on with me allowed people to be more open and vulnerable, which allows us to like actually solve problems, as opposed to just engaging on this surface level of like, let's attack the business from this angle, from this angle, and that doesn't mean that stuff, KPI. That doesn't mean that stuff doesn't matter. It's like obviously really important, but when I see people that get stuck or blocked or whatever, it's never that they don't understand the thing, right? Because I've told everyone the thing a million times, and it's just not that. It's the deep stuff. But when I was like, hey guys, if you're talking to Rich, okay, you're talking to this part of Rich, you know, the work box, and we only talk about this stuff over here.
Right.
There's only so deep you can go. And even when like I kind of try to translate it and bring it in, I don't know if the depth or the trust or whatever was there for people to feel like, oh, okay,
Totally.
like I can.
So by you being vulnerable, it allowed them permission to.
It's like
also be
safety.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Yep.
It's back to energetics, and also just one point. Like yesterday, you asked about mental versus emotional. I think this is a perfect example of like Rich's brilliant mind figuring out how to do this, but his heart was actually the driver. His spirit was the driver.
Yep.
You know, to use sort of a dichotomy.
So, just like a reflection here, tell me if I'm understanding this correct, because that lower left quadrant there, 500K, 10 to 15, 5 to 8 clients, 10 to 15 hours a week. You know, for so many people, one client at 60K for 10 to 15 hours a week is already an impossibility, right? So the fact that you were able to do that was because of your recovery mechanisms. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and it was a combination of two things. Okay. So there's a lot of good recovery stuff, but there's also a lot of like trauma coping mechanism skills that allow me to be able to do this.
Okay.
So it's a little bit of both, right? Like when I'm bringing kind of my best self, it can kind of create outcomes like this when it's aligned. But, you know, a lot of this comes from coping mechanisms from like being a kid and having to like solve problems in this way. Like this is like a unique set of skills that I didn't just invent for business. Like I originally used it to just navigate life.
Like efficiency, compartmentalization, rationalization.
Yep.
Yep.
Exactly.
Can you say more about that?
Yes, please.
Sure.
What would examples of that be, just in life in general?
Like using those skills.
Yeah, the compartmentalization, rationale.
I think it's at the core of this discussion, like ways that we are introducing buckets or fragments to deal with something which may be unseen.
Yeah.
Because it sounds like you turned what was initially in childhood a coping mechanism
Yes.
into a very systematized and robust framework to run this business, right? But the reason you were able to like execute it so beautifully was this. But you still, it's not like when you go through a recovery process, right? It's not like you throw out everything before it. You alchemize and sublimate to make the best of it, right? You like polish off the gold, so to speak.
Yep.
So, I don't know. I feel like probably we all do this to some degree, right? And then it'll get into thermostat.
Can I give a concrete example, like
Sure.
super quick and easy?
for it.
So I grew up in a fairly abusive childhood. And so I had to figure out what my parents were going to do as soon as they walked in the door, right? Like I had to know what mood they were in, what was going to happen.
Yep.
And so that gives me the ability in a sales conversation to feel into somebody on like a really deep level and predict where they are and what their behavior is going to be. And that's what makes me good at sales. And so it's skills like that you just get early on and then can translate into something useful or can be the thing that rips you apart, right? Because I can also use that to manipulate in a very big way. And that's what I did the first half of my life.
Well
To
said.
get what you want.
To get what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Becoming aware of how you're using the thing, whatever it is.
Exactly.
It's like
like how did you become aware of this problem?
Okay, well, to use like a similar example to Jay, and I feel the like being able to feel people like really quickly and easily.
Yep.
I have that too.
Yeah, it's empathetic gift.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Empathetic or like whatever, right? It's the ability to feel into someone.
Yeah, hypervigilance.
Yeah. Like repeating the word.
Just repeat the word. So, okay, a lot of this like productivity efficiency stuff, my parents had like really, really high expectations for me that I was not interested in at all. But like the only way that I could, ironically, I built something quite similar to this growing up. They were like, these are the things you need to do, right? Like you need to get straight A's and participate in this and this and like, you know, because that's just like what everyone in our family did.
Yeah.
I was not interested in that, but I just wanted to do whatever I wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
So I figured out all of these skills and coping mechanisms to be able to kind of navigate those expectations and all the shit that they wanted me to do.
Yeah.
So that then I could go over and like live life.
Sure.
So this is stuff that kind of I grew up with. And then, yeah, basically from 16 to 21, I was like in active addiction, and you pick up a lot of skills doing that. And, you know, basically like living kind of on an animalistic level.
Yeah. Just the logistics of like getting drugs and meeting drug dealers and navigating situations. Like, I remember buying drugs in cars and stuff, like just like fucking
The whole thing.
weird situations. And looking back, it's like, man, that's like crazy that we did that.
And you gotta be pretty entrepreneurial too.
100%.
Like, you gotta
Yeah.
pay for your habit. Like,
Yep.
It's not an easy thing to do.
It's a
And
small
you're-
business.
And it's or medium to large. But you know, it's funny. You introduced yesterday outlaw, right? I've said this before on a call, but like entrepreneurship and like organized crime are like 20 degrees like away, you know, in terms of like living right on the edge of what's normal or acceptable, you know.
Well, it's leadership and community.
Leadership and community, exactly.
It's the same
Yeah,
mechanisms.
I think it's like a resourcefulness also.
Really?
Yep.
that you get. I mean,
Yep.
I've had my own things with tobacco, weed, and other things. So
Yep.
like I don't know, I've had weed with me from flying from Brazil to the U.S. or
Yep.
Things where when I tried to quit smoking, I made these rules where
Yep.
okay, my lunch break, I can never own cigarettes anymore, so I can only get it from others.
Right.
So I would
So
like in my lunch break, I would
Makes sense.
walk around the center of the city and see how I can approach people. And if you ask people like, can I have a cigarette? They're like, no, why would I give you one? Right? So I had all these things that I tested. Like,
Yep.
all I have is like a quarter. Would you mind giving me one of your cigarettes because I'm out? And they're like, oh yeah, sure. Here's a cigarette. Have another one.
So
and
that
we'll
worked
keep your
better.
money, right?
Better hit
For
rate.
example. So you learn all these skills,
I like
right?
that.
Sales skills, things like
Business.
Dude, I got to a point. I used to smoke like a lot of marijuana. To be clear.
Really?
I would never,
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I don't at all.
No, I know.
But
No, this is just to say that it builds incredible skills, actually. Yeah.
But I would get to a city like on tour, and I'd be able to intuitively go to where I could find it and just stand there and look at people and make eye contact, and that was it.
Yeah.
And it was so easy.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
It's nuts. But I was thinking, like I remember once I was in Nice. No, in Toulon. I don't know. Some city in France. What's the? I think it's Toulon. Anyway, buying hash, off this Algerian guy, and it's like, he's like, oh yeah. He's like, come with me. So you like kind of follow him around a corner, and then his homie comes up in a car, and then you get in the car, and you're in the car now, and it's like, okay, cool. Done. And it's like, but in that moment, it's like, you don't know what the hell is going to happen. Like, and I think back, it's like, is that a risk really worth taking? To like get high and listen to Queen?
Oh man.
But it is like, to your point, like there's a certain resourcefulness and a risk taking.
Yeah, risk
which
taking,
also
for
kind
sure.
of like, okay, if you're taking like a financial risk or something in your business, like, you're not putting your life on the line anymore. You're not dealing with these people that may or may not be tweaking,
Right.
That's what I was thinking about, like just the excitement that comes with like
the rush.
intoxication or like going into circumstances that if you were sober you wouldn't, right? But like that translates into taking risk, going into the unknown and entrepreneurship. Like,
Yep.
Is that a parallel that you might draw between those?
Yeah, I think I was participating in the informal entrepreneurial economy during that time period. So it was a logical step.
Informal. I like that. That's a really good way to describe it.
This is exactly what I'm talking about with the outlaw.
Yeah,
Like
Yeah.
this
totally.
is it. It's like applying. If you can funnel that energy into
Something
this,
good.
like dude.
Yeah, capital G, like
Yeah.
something really worth doing. Anyway, little tangent there. Yeah.
So the conclusion is that yes, recovery was a big part of why you were able to work with so many clients, so many contractors at such a high price and generate so much revenue with such little time per week, because you're able to do that for two reasons. One, you did have the recovery mechanisms, but initially, even before that, you developed incredible resource skills,
Right.
gathering,
mechanisms.
coping mechanisms, to deal with the relationships of your life.
100%.
Mm.
Yep. So it was both, right? And I try to stay more in this to the best of my ability, but I have access to both, and how I use them is kind of like the balance.
Mm-hmm. I guess to use some of that resourcefulness or that craftiness from a heart-centered, faith-based place, I mean, that's fantastic,
Yeah, I mean, it's like Jay was talking about, this can be the gift or it can destroy you,
Well, and in the gene keys in the system that you're, super familiar with, it's literally shadow, gift, city,
The saying
right?
is every shadow contains a gift.
Right.
So like these things are here to be our greatest teachers,
Mm.
but you got to be willing to face them and look at them because they're hard to transmute. Like it's hard to work with these energies.
Mm. Right.
But what's below it is,
The gold.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious, Rich, can you speak to like the process of figuring out how to present that, like what to say, what to kind of keep?
Mm.
And I'm curious, like even now, like, yeah, because I'm assuming there's still some line or there's still some
Boundary.
the way to put, yeah, some boundaries or
Something healthy.
yeah, like sort of respecting yourself and your own journey, like those other parts of your life without having to like have full fluidity, I guess, across everything.
Can you,
But I think
can you
like
explain your question?
Can I maybe
The
interpret?
firewall, it's still some kind of firewall somewhere, like on corners.
Well, I don't know if we call it a
That-
firewall, right? It's like what I was talking about yesterday, low stakes to higher stakes. The way you tell Blake, and then you tell, well, your inner circle, your family, right? And then you trust Blake enough to tell him,
Yep.
and then you would tell your clients,
Yep.
and then you tell the world.
That is what
And you do it
happened.
in that order,
Mhm.
right? You don't tell the world first,
Yeah,
right?
I saw the Blake video.
but I think
I didn't still.
I'm curious about like your process of like what do I say, because it's not like you're going and saying like your whole
Right.
journey and every experience you went through in that time, right?
The biopic.
Oh, like
Yeah.
like how deep do I go?
Yeah, and also I'm curious, like, because from my experience with this too, it's like to really tap into that, you kind of have to like clear it out. Like usually there's a lot of maybe like shame or like negative emotions and
Sure.
stuff tied with that. So like you can't use that as fuel if it's like dirty fuel.
Sure.
Or it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
clean
This is
it out
pretty
kind of.
nuanced,
I feel like
but
you clean a lot of that in recovery.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
well, you're
that's
14 years
the
in or
hack
12 years in or
is
whatever.
14 years in,
Yeah.
and when I go to recovery meetings, I've probably told my story 1,000 times.
Right.
So that's when you talk about the lowest stakes environment. It's
Yeah.
actually that.
Recovery.
hmm
Such a safe space.
Yeah. So that's where I have a lot of experience. But
Yeah.
I mean, there is discretion. Like, I don't just fucking go up to any random person and be like, yeah, I used to do heroin. Like,
Cool, dude.
I used to like rob people. It was crazy.
Yeah.
With the eyebrows.
With the eyebrows.
It's
Like,
kind of like knowing when the tool is appropriate for the job.
yep.
And being like, oh, okay, yeah, I know what to do for this. But like,
Yeah.
most of the time, you don't have to pull that tool out of the bag.
100%. Yeah. It's like when it's useful.
Yeah, I think what Rich is talking about here, and maybe this is part of your question, is you might be talking about things that you're still healing. And Rich is talking about things that he has already healed.
Yeah.
So it's the difference between a wound and a scar. You talk about your scars, but if there's still wounds, it might not be, you need to heal that first, and that might be in recovery, or that might be wherever it is. Once it's healed and you understand the lesson, then it's something that you can probably talk about.
Right.
And like, I just want to bring
That's why
that.
this is so important.
Exactly. Like, so often I think people think I need to heal my wounds in order to enter into a relationship. But in reality, it's bringing your wounds into relationship that creates
You
the
have to look
sense
at
of
them.
authenticity and closeness within that relationship that allows everyone to do the healing that everyone there needs.
But if
So-
you're still lashing out and triggered and like all that kind of stuff, it can still be a painful experience for a lot of people. both
I
you
just-
and them.
I just think like we're tribal as humans and we're designed to heal as a tribe. And I think it's a big part of what we're missing, not to get too esoteric in the world right now. It's
100%.
like an ability to bring our shame and to bring our guilt and to bring all the stuff that we want to hide away to have other people see that is, I think, the medicine, or at least part of it.
I guess then it's like, what's the line between professionalism and this stuff that we're talking about?
I mean, I would argue that breaking down the line is the goal here.
Doesn't mean you have to go put everything on social media.
Exactly.
no,
Yeah.
I think like
Trauma
you can't
dump.
heal on stage. There are like different circles of relationships and wealth that you have to give first before you can go on stage and open your wounds and be like, hello,
Yeah.
it's me. But like if you can't handle that moment and you haven't healed well enough to represent that to other people properly, then like a setting where not that you're gonna teach them, but like be able to express yourself. It's kind of what it is. I'm with
It's well put.
If you're looking at this and you think some of this seems familiar, and
Hypothetically.
and you can see patterns of behavior and tendencies and so on, and you have a sense that that they could be holding you back or inhibiting you in some way. What's practical advice for how to become aware of how these things are a problem, as opposed to spending years just staying as you were? And like, how do you
It's getting
explore that or
close.
investigate that? Because sometimes I would ponder on my tendencies and the way I do things, but it doesn't lead me to a light bulb moment where I think, oh, that's why I'm doing this, or that's why this is a problem. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, this is what I did, but I think there are a million different ways to go at it. I think everyone is kind of working at that same task in their own way.
Energetics.
And the first E. Yeah.
E1.
E1 is energetics. So I'm not like, you need to join some kind of recovery program or something like that. I
No.
rarely advertise that as a
Right.
solution. I just kind of share like what worked for me. $37. See me out back. I've got all the
Get into the
Stripe
car.
checkout link.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of awareness, and this goes into a lot of this internal thermostat stuff, which we'll talk about. For me, awareness, where I get it, is from introspection. So journaling. Like I have done morning pages pretty consistently. I don't know if you know what that is. Yeah. Which has been extremely helpful.
I don't.
What?
I don't. What's
I'll
morning
explain,
pages?
I'll explain them.
Okay.
I guess I'll do it now. The TLDR it's basically like a daily writing practice. There's a whole book. It's called The Artist's Way. It's by Julia Cameron. And you basically wake up every morning. You've got 3 blank sheets of paper, and you just write whatever's on your mind. Stream of consciousness. There's no like objective. It's just to like get things out of your brain. And I've been able to surface a lot of
Interesting.
insights and thoughts and feelings and like internal scripts and stuff by just paying attention to that.
Is that a daily practice?
Yeah,
Still?
yeah. But I'm not like, 600 days, morning pages. I try to do it as often as possible, but
Yeah.
I've gone through periods where I did it religiously, and I've gone through periods where I didn't. Same with meditation, honestly,
Yeah.
which is the other.
That's
the
the
other one
first
that
thing
I'd
in the
say.
morning thing for you?
That's what she kind of
Yeah.
suggests in the book. I
But
think
you did it with your clients too, right? You did like a sprint.
Yeah, we
like
did 30
days.
twice, actually. 30 days of morning pages. Bryce has done it. I think it seems like you like it. It seems like it's been beneficial.
I gave you the book title.
Yeah.
Everyone I
Yeah,
know
Connor.
who's done it speaks very highly of it.
Yeah. So that's great. So I would say the internal stuff, whether it's writing, meditation, sitting with yourself, like creating spaces where where there's no distraction, where you can just be with yourself. And then for me, which, the way that I experience this is through the recovery community. But being able to share honestly about where I'm at with people and have them kind of reflect back what they're hearing, what they're seeing that maybe I'm missing, is probably the other missing piece
That's exactly it.
that works. And like, as long as you have people like in your life who you trust, you can kind of create that.
Yeah.
But those are the 2 ones. I think there's only so far that I sometimes can get with myself and my journal and my meditation.
Yep.
And sometimes I need someone to be like, dude, like, what are you doing? Like, you've been talking about the same thing for like 6 months. Like, what's going on?
I think
And that's the awareness.
I think, and
piece,
the
at least.
discretion and
Just awareness.
discernment piece is also, it's very important to, it's like in a recovery community, there's this common ground of like a set of values about safe space, talking about these experiences. So determining like who you share with is important.
Yeah. Oh, I don't
And-
just tell. Yeah. I mean,
No,
this is so
exactly.
important. You don't just like vomit on anyone.
It's just like it's just like what we talked. Like I don't know who's seen this video I made at the whiteboard, but I talked about the 1 + 1 = 3 community as opposed to a zero-sum community. This is the concept that like I became really aware of when I was at music school. It's like everyone's playing cello, practicing the same piece of music, which means that there's all this scarcity and competition, and if you really win, it just creates jealousy. It's the same when you're like sitting around the dinner table and you talk about your entrepreneurial ambitions and they just kind of laugh at you, or like they're like, that's ridiculous, like you should get a job. Yeah. And so choosing the spaces, right, and to be in these kind of rooms where we can like share with unfettered is extremely important. In some ways it's, you need the inner piece to like prime it, and then you need to be seen in your experience and not like belittled or shamed in your ambition or your difficulty or whatever it is, right? Well, you notice the language Rich uses when he speaks of I'm in recovery? He didn't say I'm recovered, even though he's been sober a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, let me tell you, if I pick up drugs, it's going to be a bad time and I will no longer be in recovery. So I don't, that's a lifelong thing for me.
And do you fear that?
No.
No.
I mean, because for me, I know what I need to do to like maintain my state. I've also have a lot of evidence, 14 years that I've been able to do it. And what were you talking about? Sorry, it's major aside. but also like in terms of just like sharing my story, like I'm not telling my story so that I can be like, oh, look at me, I'm healed and like I'm a poster child for recovery or anything like that. Like I don't care about that at all. That was like the last thing that I wanted to do. I just wanted to be able to connect with people and kind of share my experience so that like people know what's really going on with me. But that doesn't mean like with all of this, like I'm not advocating, therefore you should get on YouTube and record a video about
you see a lot of that too.
People
who are not ready to share, like or people like that you're trying to get advice or like it's validation ultimately from people that you don't even know. So I think to not share on Facebook is wise, and I think you just tell the people that you really care about if you feel it's important. But you know, it's something that you have dealt with and maybe will deal with, but you're
it's low stakes
you're
to
doing
high
it.
stakes.
Low stakes, high stakes.
Very,
like keep it close, you know.
And you're not you're not alone.
No.
Like who in this room has struggled with mental health issues?
Yeah, no kidding.
Right? Like
oh, there you go.
Right? So when you go and say
Both of us.
everybody.
Turns out you're weird if you don't.
So like that's the lesson, right? Like that's what's gonna resonate with people. They're gonna connect with you. They're not gonna think you're different. They're gonna be like, oh, she gets me. Because we all have it.
Before we move, though, could you talk a little bit about the 0 to 1% and like
Oh,
also like that, and then like that related to the recovery, and the recovery related to the fear, and just like how like all of that moved? Because I hear a lot about like how your personal life gives you all this like nuance, but then you have like work, and then like you have to like figure out the numbers and like go and like get the clients or whatever, and then like how you can. I don't know. I feel like the work life, it's like balance is like something that everybody's trying to like figure out. But then like how, like, what would you say about that? Like how to not like get consumed by the work in order to, I don't know.
So there's probably two things here. On the work-life balance, I try to describe it as like work-life integration, which doesn't mean most people think, oh, if I don't have work-life balance, then I'm going to be fucking emailing 24/7 and like it's going to be terrible. And like I am not advocating for that at all. When I mean work-life integration, I don't mean work 24/7, right?
Yeah.
It's that couldn't be further from the truth. It's understanding that like it's all one thing, but it's not split by this boundary, right? So the way like I draw it usually is just like dotted lines, right? It's permeable. They flow in between each other, right? And one serves the other. They both serve each other, right? As opposed to these two arrows just serving the life, right?
Yep.
It's like this, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm not advocating for a boundaryless existence where you're constantly on all the time. I believe that like all of these things are necessary. I mean, it goes back to the 3 E's from yesterday. How are you maintaining your spiritual state? How are you maintaining your physical state, your mind, your emotions, all that stuff? And there'll be times where the work looks like work, where it's like I'm in front of a computer, like figuring stuff out and engaging with that part of myself. And then there are times where like the life really looks like life, and sometimes the boundaries are in between.
Yeah, sprints.
Exactly. So it's really not this thing where it's like everything is one or the other.
Did you say sprints? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like what I did this week, for instance, like getting ready for this weekend and like that show last night. It's like it's an unusual like spike in intensity, but very manageable. It's not like I need to sleep for 5 weeks. Like no. And that's a result of just like tuning in, but it is like definitely more energy intensive than most weeks, which is fine. But I think maybe because like Melly, you're in school, right? And there's all this stuff you have to do for school. So then naturally work ends up taking up all this stuff. And so I think what we're talking about here is in the context of like when you're working for yourself, right? To not take those same patterns that we've learned through the institutions to be like, I'll work here and then I'll live here. But actually to live a more holistically oriented life where the work feeds into the life and the life feeds into the work, and there's not this hard like, oh, I need to just like drill in and focus and ignore everything else and fragment. And like, unfortunately, I think probably a lot of our experience with the school system is that.
That's what they teach you.
That's what they teach you. So naturally, it doesn't create harmony in your life, right?
No, but what I'm...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pardon?
Same when you're being employed. It's like
Yeah, same with being
you have
employed.
a choice. You only have the work-life balance, which is separating the two.
Right. Instead of integration.
Yeah.
The thing that's so sad is we need people in the world who are employed. Like,
But like as an entrepreneur, you can create great work for people which is aware of these sort of dynamics and let them own their time, let them own their responsibilities. Like you don't have to clock in and clock out. Like, you know, there's a huge difference in how you, as an employer, how you treat your employees, right, and give them a sense of sovereignty, like an upward mobility, you know. So I think there's ways to do it. Absolutely.
And also a mission that they can also like shout from the rooftops.
Yeah, something they believe in, and also, Joanna, like a lot of people don't want to take on the risk of all this stuff.
Yep.
yeah.
A lot
Like
of
we
people
talked about
want the
yesterday.
good job.
You know,
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
people don't want this life.
What were you?
And that's fine.
I didn't want to cut you off.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say that like don't you have moments where you have to like lock in because you have to get things done for
Hell
your
yeah.
business,
You
like
gotta lock in
have
all the
to, like,
time. Like,
That's what I'm saying. Like that's where I'm going with like this like balance. Like when do you lock in? Because sometimes it's not gonna be like hours. It's gonna be like days of locking in because you have this idea that you have to develop and then like bring it to life.
yeah.
And for that to happen, you have to be able to be clear with your life and then like just be able to like deliver all your energy towards this one like thing that you want to like make like tangible.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah,
totally normal. Like there are seasons to business. Sometimes it's freaking lock in time and you're all in and you know that that's just the season that you're in. And then, you know, the hope is that on the bookends of those kind of locking in times, you're doing what you need to take care of yourself so that like you can be supported while you're doing it.
Mm.
But like, this is a delicate balance. I have hit both sides of this pendulum super, super hard. So it's the same thing with the recovery thing. I'm not like, you know, Mr. Recovered. I'm also not Mr. I figured this out. Like the reason I talk about this stuff and I teach this stuff, there's this quote that's, you know, we teach what we most need to learn. And I think that's what most of us do here. So I'm navigating this stuff as well and trying to like, you know, walk the talk, but I'm not an expert. Sometimes I'm like, damn, like I totally got sucked in to work. It was like kind of freaking out this week and I need to like reset. But like what we spoke about yesterday, which was, I forget if you saw me talking about this. I think someone asked something to the effect of like, how do you know which direction to go in or whatever? And I gave this metaphor of like, you know, you can go 100 miles in this direction
Without looking up.
Right? And realize, oh, I actually want to be over here, you know? And then you're like, shit, now I got to go over here.
Which is another 100 miles.
Which is another 100 miles, right? Or you could be like, okay, well, I'm going to go like 10 miles.
Check where I am.
Oops, 10 miles. Oop.
Yep.
Check where I am, right? And be like, oh, actually, I need to make a little move. And
Yep.
then you're like, oh, okay, maybe I need to be over here. And then you're like, maybe I overshot it a little bit.
Yep.
And then you're like constantly kind of calibrating. And
Yep.
the more you're like connected with like yourself and
Yep.
you know what you want and how you feel and all this stuff,
Yep.
the easier it is to make these kind of like little corrections so it's not as violent to, you know,
Yep.
go hard in these directions.
This is beautifully demonstrated. Like say this is like a year-long period, right?
Yep.
And your destination's here. You start here. Okay. You can just lock in and repeat this strategy and then check, where am I at 12 months in? Oh, I actually am way over here. Whereas like, okay, a month in, where am I at? Okay, that worked, but we need to veer this way. That worked. Okay, maybe I overshot. And you're always checking in with like how you're feeling and how you're doing and the North Star and bridging that gap in a graceful way. So but like this is a big thing, a big breakthrough in entrepreneurial thinking is to determine what is most important to do and to do that thing from a place of balance, ideally. So like filling your cup so you can do that work from a place that isn't like you're just on burnout all the time, right? And when we talk about leverage in decision making, It's scanning the whole field to see what's the thing that actually moves the business, and then what kind of energetic reserves or inner work or belief systems I need to, address so that I can make that move. So we need space in our lives, really, I think, to feel that stuff. And to this point, the more kind of stuff we have open, the less space we have internally to actually like do these check-ins. So it's like the glass gets really murky.
Yeah, I think you touched on a really important point that like at its kind of highest level, most of the day-to-day of business is just decision making.
Yes.
And looking at a wide variety of options of ways that we can spend our time, energy, attention, and then just asking yourself, okay, well, which of these is pointing me in the direction of what I want? And maybe that's financial, maybe that's serving others, maybe, it's like creating space. Like there are all these different things that we can optimize for. And if you don't have clarity on like, what the hell do I even want? You're just going to sprint in a direction and then look up and be like, okay, was I close? No.
Yeah.
I think another thing that kind of elimination of that line gives us is an ability to follow our natural rhythms and cycles, kind of like what you were speaking to. Because what I've noticed with entrepreneurs is they often follow the up-tempo rhythms and seasons, but then don't follow the down-tempo rhythms.
And then they get taken out.
And then that can only go for a certain amount of time. So you being in school, you don't get as much of that ability to go with your natural rhythm because you just have constant assignments.
100%.
And that's what all of us learned, and that's why I think we have such a struggle with it. But as entrepreneurs, like there are seasons where our body and our mind just wants us to rest. And we so often don't honor those. And it's in those moments that like the gold comes. But we're so worried that if we don't have our hand on the wheel that everything's going to fall apart, that we don't allow that to happen.
It's a pretty extreme worldview, but I'll share it because perhaps it's, helpful. Marcus Aurelius believes that even if you were to live a life where you were literally being tortured like every day, that you have the internal resources to maintain your like human dignity, basically, and even some degree of like a good life. That's the level of decision making we have internally.
Victor Frankl.
Victor Frankl.
Man's search for meaning.
Man's search for meaning.
Same thing,
Yeah.